Hey there. My name is Peter Fayroian, and I'm the head of Greenhills School, fortunately. And we are fortunate to have 1997 alum Leah Plunkett, Dr. Leah Plunkett.
Attorney, actually. I don't know
Attorney?
if you gave me doctor.
I thought you had your.
I do have my JD, but so it's a Juris Doctor. So
Right.
I guess I could take it. But
Okay.
I have a number of doctors
I
in the family
I
who.
thought you also had a PhD.
No, but thank you.
All right, so we're done with this interview. We're only welcome to this edition of Between Two Evergreens. But Leah is in town to visit us, of course, and her old school. But she was here speaking at Literati last night, and she's going all around the country and talking with people about her new book, Sharenthood, and also ways in which we can be better about what we do online, particularly when it comes to our kids. But that's just a part of what Leah's done with her life and what you're doing with your life.
Thank you.
So I'd love to know a little bit about your trajectory.
Sure.
Before you became somebody who is educating the world about this great cultural experiment for which we don't have a lot of data, but we're just throwing ourselves and our kids into. How did you get from being a field hockey player and student here at Greenhills School to what you're doing now?
Everything that I did here got me to this point. Despite not having the doctorate, I would say that there's so much of this book that's really rooted in how I was taught here, particularly integrated. The advanced placement U.S. history and English class that I took my junior year with Mr. Zellers and Ms. Dupre was all about how you bring together stories, both the stories that we make up and the mythologies that we create, and then also, of course, what actually happened. That's a history part of it. And so from there, I went to Harvard, where I concentrated in American history and literature, so integrated the college years. I did debate getting a doctorate either in addition to or instead of the law degree, so your intelligence is good. And at the very last minute, I went just with the law degree. I stayed around Harvard and did that as well, because there were just so many conversations I wanted to have about things that were happening here and now.
Right.
I made the decision in 2003. I was involved in protesting the Iraq War and many other forms of civic engagement, which also have roots in how I was taught here. But the law degree felt more immediate to me. What's interesting, of course, is how things come full circle. So, got the law degree, clerked for a judge, went and founded a program at New Hampshire Legal Assistance, the legal aid organization in the state where I live, called the Youth Law Project, which works on behalf of at-risk and court-involved kids. And from there, I did consumer rights law, but then it kind of all came full circle, Peter, and I on-ramped back to academia. And I've been at University of New Hampshire School of Law and the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard for about 6 years. And the approach I take in this book, though, does completely have its roots in that integrated, sort of like eagle arms and yoga, right?
Yeah.
So integrated was bringing together history and English. My undergrad was bringing together history and literature. And this book brings together my personal and my professional experiences. Personal, I have 2 young kids, so I'm in the thick of trying to figure out, is it okay to put this on my social media account? Is it okay to use an Alexa or a Fitbit with my child? And the professional being that I'm a total law nerd and I'm fascinated by privacy laws. So this book really represents that intertwining of the personal and professional interests I have, as well as that integrated approach in terms of bringing together law, which this book is anchored in, with a whole bunch of other things in terms of what's happening in our culture and also the other stories we tell.
Well, it explains also your in your introduction you referenced Tom Sawyer, and I think that might be a nice little jumping off point. So if you could explain a little bit for people who haven't yet read the book, which they will.
Thank you. Emphasis on yet.
That you use an analogy there. At least you explain how Tom that could never have happened today and why, and then maybe talk a little bit about essentially the conceit of the book.
Sure. So I opened by saying that if Tom Sawyer were a real boy, alive today, he would be arrested for what he does in the first chapter of the book. He skips school, which we all know, don't do that. And he also has to sneak back into his guardian's house in the middle of the night. He's gone out, he's beaten up the new kid in town, so he's gotten into a fight, and he's broken curfew, so he's sneaking back into Aunt Polly's house. And the book takes as a jumping off point this idea that if Tom Sawyer were real and alive today, he would probably blab on social media what he was up to. But, and this is where the book focuses, Aunt Polly would also blab. She would likely have phones, right? Like, Tom got in trouble again. Cops showed up last night. And so the book really is concerned fundamentally with the changing or eroding notion of childhood and adolescence, which I say used to be more and should still be protected spaces to play, to make mischief and mistakes, and to grow up better for having made them. And because we are using digital technologies to capture and share and aggregate and analyze and act upon our kids' private information, we're really depriving them of that protected space.
Yeah. And it's what I love about this book is it and also what scares me about the book is you took us to a point and then you went further in the same way in which I was only getting to certain points. And interestingly enough, not going that next step about my children and our children and kids and what we're doing with them, we've spent so much time just focusing on the way in which social media is affecting their kids and the way in which they're defining themselves and the challenges of that. I, as an employer, right? I look at millennials' Facebook pages, or at least I Google. I don't have Facebook. I'm the only person in the world, I think, at this point.
Yes, you might be. That might be a true statistic.
Never even signed on. But sure, I Google, and then I realized, if you're doing something in college, which you do in college, and it shows up, I'm human and I have biases, and if there's two people and one has a photograph of her doing this and one has a photograph of him, only doing sort of charity work somewhere, somewhere. I don't know, but you take it to obviously a logical place that I wasn't going, which is what we're doing with our children. And so what are of course, personally, what steps can we take as we sort of do our Facebooking and talking about our families, posting? What would you recommend?
Well,
tell us what to do.
I love that invitation.
Yeah.
That's a great invitation. I have a very long list. Now, I am a child of the 80s and 90s, so I always flash back to some of those now old school public health slogans, right? So we were always taught, just say no to drugs, practice safe sex. So when I think about Charenting, I don't take the just say no to Charenting approach, in that I think it is pretty much impossible, if you define Charenting as I do, as being everything that parents, grandparents, teachers, coaches, other trusted adults do with kids' private information via digital technologies. So yes, it's social media, but it's also a Nest Cam or a sensor-enabled baby booty or an educational technology application, whatever it is. That Charenting, I think it is really pretty much impossible to just say no to Charenting entirely. Even if you're not on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you can go ask all the kids out there, whatever the kids are doing these days, even if you're not on that, you're probably still using a cell phone, right? Your car probably has some sensor-enabled technology, so some Charenting is happening. I don't think we can just say no, Peter, but I do think that we can practice safe Charenting or smarter Charenting. What does that look like? Well, that looks like thinking about, at the level of values or principles, what are the commitments that you as a parent, you as a grandparent, you as an educator have? And if those commitments are anchored in values such as the importance of play, the importance of respect, the importance of connecting, actual authentic connections, not likes or clicks or dislikes or it's complicated, I can't keep up. And also of the value of forgetting. because one of the things that I do find so powerful is this concept that in order to become the adults we're going to become, we have to have these protected spaces, and we have to remember who we are. And being back here, of course, I'm flooded with so many wonderful memories, but we also have to have space for those things we did in college, or even, dare I say, high school and middle school, to be forgotten, or to at least not be visible to everyone. So before the talk I gave at Literati last night, I went into the dresser drawers in my old bedroom, my parents' house, pulled out a number of things, including this nice Greenhills calendar from 1990 to 1991. There's some nice notes in it that my mom made of, when she needed me to babysit. I found, graduation pictures. I found, birthday card for my best friend. I found RSVPs for my bat mitzvah. I found amazing things that capture both my daily life and also like my bat mitzvah and graduation, big rites of passage. And I love seeing that.
Yep.
And I love, grabbing the pictures and showing them to the people who were in them. I would not love if everything that I did for the current kids, even before they're born, because people post ultrasound pictures or use fertility tracking apps or fertility tracking bracelets. I would not appreciate it as an adult if everything about who I was not capable of being forgotten. So I think thinking about values, and then I think also whether it's as a family or a school or an after-school program, just come up with a little brief digital data privacy plan.
Right.
And have some very straightforward do's and don'ts. I think some very big don'ts. Don't post pictures in any state of undress, even if it's just a bathing suit. Don't post identifying information around where you live or kind of what your movements are. And one rule of thumb that I often give to people who are sort of like me, born analog rather than born digital, would be if you would have found it weird and creepy if your parents or your teachers had surveilled you in this manner or taken photos of you doing this or written up an anecdote about you doing that, if you would have found it weird to have that on the front page of the Ann Arbor News or, in the Greenhills hard copy newsletter back in 1990, whatever, maybe don't do that for your kids now, because it's still weird and creepy even though we're doing it in a phone or in an app or in a smart device instead of in brick and mortar.
Yeah. So thanks for that. I have two questions. One, right, so when you come back, as you are coming back to be our visiting writer at the school, I have often, when alums come back and to the school, have some fun, and you sort of, it's not unusual for all heads of schools like to sort of point to the yearbook,
of
right?
course,
and say,
I love that.
This was Leah when she was in high school. But sometimes it's there's something a little embarrassing, like an erudite or quote in the yearbook that you're embarrassed about. But that's a choice that and oftentimes I'll ask, but you have to go find it. And with all of that now being available, if you could sort of speculate 25, 30, 40 years from now, where it's all going to be there, it's so easily found, what are those ramifications for those? Are we going to become numb to seeing everywhere people when they were younger, and how is that going to affect how we hire, how we look at people and talk with people or know about each? There's no mystery. The other question, more importantly, what is this doing for our kids and the way in which they define themselves in the world if they don't have those private lives? And what can we grew up with our private lives, right?
Yes.
In private, and our parents maybe shared something, or we were allowed to share. What is that? How is that affecting kids' psyches? And if you could think 25 years from now,
right? I think that we are fundamentally eroding the space for kids to play, and because we're eroding that, I think we are depriving them of the ability, not to be cheesy, but to find themselves. And when I say play, I mean, yes, running around on the playground or the field hockey field, but more broadly, I mean iterative space and experimental space and those inside jokes that I still remember from sitting in the forums out there, but fortunately I, didn't write all over the internet. And I think if kids don't have those spaces, they are not going to explore the boundaries of who they are, of how they relate to people, of what is too far, what's not far enough in terms of being creative or being bold or being playful. So I really do worry, Peter, that 25 years from now, we are going to have adults who have been deprived of private spaces, therefore deprived of the ability to play and to experiment, and therefore develop the sense of agency and autonomy. And to the first part of your question, sort of speculate, could we become numb to it as a society? Yes, I think we could, but I don't think that levels the playing field. I think that what will happen is we're just going to sink the whole playing field down so that we are reducing people to sums of data points and predictors about those data points. So one thing I do think is very real is expecting that we are going to see more and more products that use different digital data points and put them through algorithmic decision making or machine learning or whatever form of artificial intelligence is the latest craze, and are using those things to provide gatekeepers like schools, like employers, like credit bureaus or insurance companies with predictions about someone's likelihood of success in that realm. And of the areas I just mentioned, there's some spotty legal protections in terms of anti-discrimination, or especially in the credit areas, a little more regulated. But in general, it is open season for what commercial, or in many cases governmental entities, can do with aggregating data about our kids, which, remember, goes back to before they're even born in some instances.
Right.
Putting it all together and using it to make predictions that many of us as gatekeepers of schools, as I am as well, I'm an associate dean and associate professor at University of New Hampshire, that we might find useful.
Right.
And I do think that that really deprives today's kids and teens and the adults 25 years from now for the ability to carve out their own path. We do not have Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, lighting out for the territories anymore.
Right. Well, I really appreciate, and I could talk for a long time, but just wanted to get this out so that those of you that, haven't read this, please do. I'm, with my 7-year-old right now, and I just bought a GeoBit for her, and I haven't used it yet. I'm going to send it back. Yeah.
Good choice. You practiced smart, Charenton. I'm sorry to your 7-year-old who probably really wanted it, but they don't need it.
No. She has no. It is her abilities exceed her, or her confidence exceeds her abilities. Okay. So when she goes off on a bike, it's just a way to make sure that I know where she is. But now I was creeped out by the thought of using it.
It's very creepy.
Now I'm totally creeped out by the thought of using it.
Yes.
Thanks for coming back home.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you in month. When are you coming back?
In the spring, yes.
In the spring, yes. Which won't be a month from
now.
No,
I have to wait out the snow and ice.
Yeah, good. Well, Leah Kaplan was here with us, and it's always great to have our alums come back, particularly ones that are not only being curious, creative, and responsible citizens, as our mission suggests all of our young people should be when they grow up and while they're young people, but you're also helping us be better human beings. So
thank you, Peter. Great to be here.
Yeah.